what happens when someone is trying to exfiltrate your data using screenshots or image files or embedded images. That's when we'll utilize our OCR technology. OCR stands for optical character recognition. With this feature, the OCR library and then the OCR engine is heavily powered by ML and AI. Basically, this engine, first, it will try to extract your sensitive data by looking at a handwritten text, an image file, a screenshot, and then it will extract your sensitive data out of that image. And then, based on the DLP policy, it will then protect your sensitive data. So for example, if you build a policy that says, I want to protect my employees' PII info, when you turn on OCR, we are basically inspecting different image files and handwritten text and so on and so forth. And we are looking for your PII data. And then when we find that sensitive PII data within that image file, we are enforcing different policies and taking different actions. Many Zscaler customers, they're also a big Microsoft shop. If you own E5 license and if you are leveraging Microsoft Azure Information Protection, then obviously you are perhaps leveraging the classification tag and labels. Now, what we have done is we have a great partnership with Microsoft. We have taken their AIP SDK and we integrated that with our man-in-the-middle proxy, our Zero Trust Exchange. And because of that integration, we can read these labels and can enforce different policy. At the same time, we can write an AIP label on a sensitive documents. Now, why reading label is important? If the end user is putting an AIP label on the endpoint, when that data comes to our proxy in the cloud, we can read that label off of the document properties and metadata of the document, and then we become an enforcer. So an example would be in our proxy, you build a policy saying, if you see an AIP label in a document that says sensitive, do not allow users to upload the document to any unsanctioned SaaS-based services, right? So in this case, we are simply reading that AIP label. We are looking at your policy, we are looking at the destination, and we are simply becoming an enforcement point. With the right integration, we are also putting an AIP label on a sensitive document. For example, when we are doing data at rest scanning, let's say you have 500,000 assets sitting in your corporate OneDrive. Using our DLP policy, when we are scanning your data at rest, we will identify which assets have sensitive information. And then if we find some critical information, we can take an AIP label, we can simply write that label onto that asset. And because of that action, Microsoft is now enforcing an encryption and rights management policy on those sensitive assets. So this is a great integration. It basically, brings the best of the world, the data protection on the endpoint through Microsoft, and then the data protection through Zscaler for your cloud assets. Let's talk about end user behavior analytics and adaptive access. Many organizations, they are looking for protection when users are representing different anomalous behavior. A couple of examples could be an employee is leaving the company and the employee is doing massive amount of upload and download from their corporate G drive. This is a direct indication that the user has some type of malicious intent. So using our UEBA, what we are essentially doing is using ML and AI, we are benchmarking every single user's behavior, and our engine knows what a normal behavior looks like. For example, John is a product manager in the company. In a 90-day stretch, he downloads about 20 gig data from my corporate G drive, but all of a sudden we see that 200 gigs of download is happening in one day. That will automatically trigger a noise, right? That, this is something that is very unusual. And when we send those alerts, then users should be able to take many actions, what we call adaptive access. So perhaps the user need to be prompted to do a multi-factor authentication, or you might want to disable that user from your Google Drive and ask user to re-authenticate and so on and so forth. So we have built many predefined policies to detect this anomalous behavior, such as bulk upload, bulk download, impossible travel, fail login attempts, and so on. And these predefined policies will get triggered when we see any of this anomalous behavior, and then when it triggers these UEBA policies, then essentially you are taking different actions to make sure your sensitive data and crown jewels are always protected. So now you have gone through all kinds of DLP policies, rules and regex and dictionaries and EDM, IDM, OCR. Now, the huge benefit here is that when you build your data protection constructs with all kinds of DLP features and stuff, our DLP engine is a unified engine that can be utilized across all channels, right? So as I walked you through all these data loss prevention policies, you can now attach to your web DLP. And that means any traffic that is going to web applications, you are inspecting it and you are enforcing policy. The same DLP policies you can leverage for your sanctioned SaaS-based services, unsanctioned SaaS applications. You can monitor the traffic going into public cloud infrastructure like AWS, Azure, GCP. And then the same DLP policies can protect your data when users are doing upload and download to your private applications. And this is what we have been doing for the last 8 years. Now, we extended the same data loss prevention engine, and then now we are also protecting the data in motion on your endpoint. So the use case here is if a user were to copy your sensitive data from the endpoint to an USB or external drive or a clipboard Bluetooth connection, we are going to be able to enforce the same DLP policy and protect your data on the endpoint. And then the new addition to the family is looking at your corporate exchange and Gmail traffic inline and be able to protect your data inline using all those DLP dictionaries and engines and EDM, IDM, and OCR.